So, we are live.
Sehr gut verwendet. Nice.
Okay, we are live!
Amazing.
Oh my god, why is it?
It's really like it's stuff we were saying before. Hi. Hello. We had some technical problems. Hence the joy at the moment. I am Rita. This is Karina. We are both participating in AMAF in the frame of the campus section of the festival. And we're in the class Preiskortingas at the Handicap Braunschweig. And today we are here to talk about the practice of Jacqueline Gerke, and in particular the piece that Karina brought us to the exhibition. And if I can attempt a small introduction as my classmate. Karina is an artist with a very, I would say, text-based practice, and you're one of the people that I know with the most sensitivity to language in general. And her research is very centered around the potentialities of text and what text and verbal expression potentiates.
This time we watch our phone because last time we had problems and it just recorded 1 minute. It should work.
Okay, great. And I would say that your work has had a pretty big jump or shape-shifting in the last 4-6 months. And the piece that you brought to AMAF is very intelligible, and we don't see an overt use of your text and your use of words, even though I still feel like the way that you think is pretty textual. So I was wondering if you care to give a few words about the work and its different elements.
Yes.
And we watch your phone again to see if
Es funktioniert.
Okay.
Super.
Es funktioniert. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so I think I want to show you first what I exhibited. I exhibited once like a video, which you can see in the festival, showing intuitive like imaginations and association processes of like from body to fish to children talking, and I showed this costume, and this is like a mermaid, maybe this way, and so I did a costume, and I got inspired by me and Marlene Rabe, a friend of mine. We were working together on creatures of transformation, and for us we were coming from like different point of views into this theme of like imaginative creatures. So like she was like looking into a werewolf, I was looking a lot into a mermaid, and I came from this fish theme. And what I did was basically talking again about body, and also for me about like seduction, as like the mermaid is always the one like seducing men, and sexuality, and maybe like I try to empathize that I own my sexuality and it's like not for men, and like this was I think something that I found very interesting about mermaids, and this like is hanging next to the video, but was used before in formats. Yeah, maybe we can talk more about the mermaid things.
We can talk more about the mermaid things. Yes. Do you want to take off the picture?
Yes,
maybe?
I think so too.
So one aspect that I personally find very alluring in your work is how in the video, because for you who haven't been at Haza 29, Karina has a TV with this mermaid sponge looking bright pink frame around, and then the mermaid costume that you just saw hanging on an also bright pink, glittery, spongy looking hanger, with the dildo chain that you saw on the image looking like a harness unraveled from the TV into the floor. And for me, what I find so successful about this work is that you have like this very playful, slightly trashy, approachable aesthetics to the mermaid costume. And the video then gives you like this very sensory insight into the associative process that came into, that materializes then in the costume and in the performance that you did. And mermaid things that you were mentioning that are particularly pertinent, I would say, is this play with unattainable desire, and a being that is very sexualized, even though it doesn't have sex, like it doesn't have a biological sex. And then also this glitching between the being a fish and the being a human, being the fish, a type of animal that is very present in our iconography in a bazillion of different ways, from it being a symbol for early Christianity to then being this feelingless, very often extremely objectified animal, like used to talk derogatorily about how someone feels the world. So,
like also like I don't know if a lot of people know this, but like fish trade is like the most problematic shit like happening. Like I didn't know this before I researched about fish, but honestly, like if we would stop eating fish, we would have like a lot less problems in the world. And there is like this huge industry around like there is human trafficking happening about like fish trade. There is like these basically animal farms like glowing around the ocean, like butcher houses. Like it's incredible how climate change and everything was influenced also by fish trade. So it's also like a very violent symbol, and also I think a very misunderstood one in the like a thing that you don't think about a lot of. I don't know, I think like fish trade is sometimes forgotten. And I researched a lot about that as well. And I think what both things why I put them next to each other, and also why I could have also printed a picture of the costumes that I just showed you, for example. But I didn't do that because I feel like there's something that I want to research. Like I do usually research-based work, I would say. Like I want to find out something. I don't really know what it is sometimes, but I want to go deeper into this experience and then research a lot. Like I watched a lot of movies about fish trade. I was like very deep into orca fish. Like orcas are not fish; they are Säugetiere. But like.
No, but there's
like
still
the
like maritime beings that are perceived in between the.
For example, orcas. This is like super interesting. They have the same social life as humans do, and so there's a lot of points where I researched and where I've tried to find why do I want to relate to a fish body, because I had this image in mind. And then it came back to the body, like we both share a body. What is a body image? What does a body feel like? This like glitching of the fish already, like how a fish feels is already like glitching, like from like you cannot hold a fish, like it always like falls. And I feel like the same is it like a lot with my identity and like how I feel about things. How I feel today very good about my border, and tomorrow I want to just like don't break free, and how things change, and how this like change as a state of mind could be like temporary, like not like Ariel being like a mermaid or a human, but being both at the same time. Because why is she always like just a mermaid? A mermaid could be also like human and could be like a mermaid, but it's always like human mermaid. So that's what I thought about, but I feel like my research doesn't go to a point where I have a conclusion. I just like try to grow in the process.
There was, now listening to you talk, something that's about the fish trade and this commodification of fish and...
What is happening? Are we again offline? No.
Okay.
Bring mal die EMAF-Musik ist mega laut. Ding nochmal. How do we do this? Einfach im OBS runter drin. Medienquelle machen wir Boom 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 so. Kannst du kurz schreiben, was better ist?
Sorry for the technical issues.
Hello, Fritz. Geil.
Okay, amazing.
Sorry.
No, for me, something that's...
What is happening? So much better, Sarai says.
Okay.
Okay. It's happening a lot.
Can we make your phone quiet?
Yes. I hope now nothing happens.
Okay. So, something that I was wondering about is how do you then correlate this objectifying of fish body to a very extreme level by global trade with the objectifying and commodification that happens within the realm of patriarchal desire?
I feel like there are different perversions of objectification, and one of them is being constantly sexualized. And I think it's just like one way how to objectify a thing, also to just see being as food or as usage is objectifying. Like to see as a thing as like just a money source and going forward over corpses. Like the sea trade also so problematic because like there are no country borders, right? So there's nobody to like officially control it and stuff like that. So I feel like there are different forms of objectification, and I cannot ever feel how it is like to be in fish trade, for example. I cannot, like, one form of objectification I can bring with me as my experience is being over-sexualized, and I feel that I want to connect, but I left, for example, the trade theme with consciousness out of my video because this is something that I feel is too big. Like, I feel doing a video about fish, I have to know this, but I cannot include it yet because I don't know enough. I don't know what my connection is to it, and I don't know how I can relate. But to sexualization, I can relate. This is something that I experience every day, and I feel like I try to go to the points where I can relate and keeping in mind the points which I cannot. And maybe I come to once, like at one point in my practice, maybe I come to the point where I can make this connection. Maybe I come to a point of like differently using found footage. I use like now I use found footage. I never did that before. Like I changed my practice in a moment a lot. And now I'm like, yes, this makes sense to use found footage. And now I'm like watching all these documentations and coming together, and maybe at some point I can talk about this problematic, but in a moment I feel like what I want to talk about is the body feeling and how it changes being over-sexualized. I think that is one part of it.
Now that you mentioned the found footage, something that in your video creates a particularly eerie and comfortable contrast, but at the same time very alluring, is your use of child play voices and like twisted toy imagery. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on how you brought it together with the glitching simultaneous identity themes that you were talking about before with your performance and your costume. Because on one hand, um, there is a very obvious aesthetical connection when you see the piece, like this playfulness, lightness with the materials, and these things that look like they're really fun to touch. But on the other hand, it does ring slightly different conceptual bells. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on how you made those connections.
I think in the costume, like the concept of being like a mermaid is maybe challenged, but I feel like a lot of this like siren talk is meant for the adults. Like I don't feel like that. I at least didn't understand that a mermaid also meant like a revenge for raped women in particular, for example. I didn't know that, and there was this like huge tale about this, about a little, like it's not a little river, it's actually a big river between like Germany and Poland, about mermaids revenging random men for whatever has done to them. Um, this is like one thing I would like put apart, because there's different parts of violence, and I feel like the Barbies, like there are Barbies all the time and dolls. I think that's like something I connect a lot. Like I feel as a pop culture thing, to be honest, on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's like also these states. Like there's not such a thing that you're like child, teenager, adult. There's always parts that glitch. Like I don't know, maybe you remember today how you were as a child. Maybe something happens now that I say something insensitive, and suddenly you're back how you're were treated as a child, or something like that. Like memories are kind of the connection, right? And I feel like what glitching and memory has in common is this like abstract, like feeling of time, feeling disoriented. Maybe that's something like why I play with children things a lot. Mm, and like honestly, like it's also fun. Like I love these like cute little thingies, and I have like access to them. I feel like they talk to me, and I feel they are more honest to me than a clean aesthetic. Like I cannot. It's like a bit of my signature. I feel like in a moment that it gets that, and I just feel very comfortable with that aesthetic in a moment.
Yeah, I remember we were talking yesterday a little bit about the process of assembling your installation. And you were very happy when I used the expression trashy to describe your aesthetics. Maybe this will be a little bit of a strange transition, considering that we just touched upon the children imagery, but I was wondering if you would like to talk a little bit more about the dildo chain that you incorporated in your work, and that in the image that we just saw looks like a harness, but that in the installation space is floating down the TV, and it is again made of very childish materials, like this female Play-Doh that is just very colorful. But I think this is perhaps the element where the textual process that underpins your research is the most obvious. So would you like to delve a bit more into that?
Yeah, it's like a really nice wordplay, and I feel like that's why I had also fun with the material, like with some things.
Maybe what is the wordplay?
So, like in German, there are several words for first, like it's called in German, it's called Meerhexe, because I didn't want to call it Meerjungfrau, because there's this word Jungfrau, which is like Jungfrau Maria, and I found it like not fitting. That maybe it would be also reappropriation, but I decided against it. And then there is like der Meerjungfrauenschwanz, so it's the mermaid tail. And in English, I think it's not the same, but in German, Schwanz has a double expression, being like a slang word for a penis. And I wanted to have then a little J. That was how it is, because I didn't want to. I know that there are like solutions that I could be like, also it was like this performative part. I want to walk around in this costume, right? And there would have been the option to just like put me on a throne, but that would have been very passive. And I didn't want to be passive. I wanted to be active. And like this dildo chain like made it possible for me. It was like a tool to do that. But also I feel like a reappropriation of like sexuality, and also of the thought that there can only be sexuality for men, but for example not between two non-men. Like lesbian encounterments are not like taken seriously because there's no dick and stuff like that. So this is what I want to like recycle, like make it powerful. That I stand there, proud lesbian with a lot of dildos. And it was like also bringing back the body thing. I think I wanted to have body parts, like, and I really found it interesting, and I have to think a lot more about like why are they so small, why are there so many, why are they like looking childish, because to bring together sexuality in children is like a no-no, but it's also like something that I do a lot, that I bring together like children images and sexuality, and I think this is like a theme I will work myself off.
Yeah, I would say not. Yeah, you do bring a lot of associations from the universe of childhood into then this
creepy sexual context.
Creepy sexual context is a wonderful definition. But I also think that like with the chain in particular, it doubles a little bit as schmuck, as jewelry in this particular case, in the way that it like, in the way that it fits then your body.
This is
and also I found it particularly pertinent when we talked about the mobility aspect, like the mobility on land aspect, that you're then able to inhabit this costume, the state, and move around instead of having this big tail that just renders you immobile. And departing from this point, I was also wondering what did inhabiting your costume, inhabiting these things that you conceptualized and sculpted, add to the costume, and how did it add to your research process?
I think it was more a recycling process. I think I recycle a lot. Like sometimes I research also, but I also recycle. And this is like recyclement, or not recyclement, but like being proud of queer identity, I think. And I think recycling, like what I read as theory, like there's theories around like why, like what sexuality between two women or two non-men can be, and there's theories like how powerful and how reinforcing of power it can be in a patriarchal like society. And I feel like I try to work with these theories, even though I feel like I don't understand all of them, and I try to recycle them as like real objects, as like videos, as association patterns, as like thinking, as like that they are not just theories, but my world, and like a belief system. I try to to make through objects my belief system visible.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. And it reminded me of something else that I've also encounter in your work quite often, and I think it's one of the advantage of the glittery, alluring, trashy aesthetics, is that it makes things more inviting and easier to inhabit for people, and I don't love the word observers or audience, but public members that are not always within our theoretical frameworks or reading the same text that we are, but are still touched by the same frameworks of ideology and power structures and sociability models. And this is something that I found particularly inviting in the way that you chose to show your work instead of showing documentation of a performance that has been, or the nice photo studio photos of you inside your costume. You just have it there hanging, which leaves this who will be there, who is inside here, very open. You know, and it allows space for each person to maybe project themselves or someone they know into those crazy boots and the glittery transparent top and the shirt and the chain. And there is something to be said about these democratizing, accessible, but not condescending ways of talking about these big, heavy theories that, like you said, can be hard to wrap your head around, even when you're researching them in depth and they're one of your main tools. Is this a concern of yours? Like this making space for the viewer somehow?
Yeah, I think okay, this sounds very sad, but what I'm trying to do is like, I try to have like a lot of fun because I did in my past, I did a lot of works which were concerning like painful experiences, and now I want to concern like fun, like I'm here experiences. I don't know how to say, and I want also other people to like, this is like what my ideal world would look like, that everybody could build their like own mermaid costume. If it has to be mermaid, it could also be a werewolf like Marlene did. Like of like being like somehow brave, to not be, you know, like to not be perfect way. We have to finish soon because Akkustand is niedrig. To like be in this glitching moment, be in the in between way, and I won't know every time like everything, and I'm just like, I wanted to celebrate that a bit, like have fun, honestly. Like I feel also that we theorize a lot, and I wanted to once make a work where I just like let go. And I'm afraid that I get theories wrong. Like I would say that, yeah. And that I think I want to be like brave for change and always change. And I think like this is something that I want to do, and I want to others do that too. But this is kind of deep, and it's
kind of deep.
You know, like I want to. I think also trying is an in-between state. You know?
Definitely. And that's a beautiful point for us to end the conversation with.
Because our Akkustand is gone. And thank you that you have been there.
Yes, thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Carina, for...
Thank you. Also, Rita built up my work with Nick.
No.
Thank you.
Very welcome. Okay, have a beautiful afternoon, everyone.
Ciao. Okay, how do we end?